So it's no secret that AMC's popular post-apocalyptic zombie series, The Walking Dead, fell off in the latter half of the series compared to the first half. The happy adventures of Rick Grimes and the gang had some extremely high highs and some really low lows, which included some horrifying writing and story choices, some arcs that lasted way too long, and the single greatest CGI deer in the history of television. Now, this also isn't to say that The Walking Dead went down and stayed there. Even in the second half of the series, there were episodes or full seasons even that were really solid, even better than some of the earlier seasons. Season 9 was really good, and I really enjoyed a good chunk of Season 10. Well, I found myself getting really uninterested the longer the Governor stayed around. But there's really no debate. The show started to teeter off the edge of a cliff starting in Season 7. The first 6 seasons were really special, and the stage was set for an absolute beast of a 7th season. And the first episode absolutely lived up to the hype. Whether you cried about Glenn and Abe, or hated Negan, you couldn't deny the tension of the Season 7 premiere. It was violent and intense, and introduced us to a fuller view of this incredible and charming new villain that had been building up throughout Season 6. It's just a shame that Season 7 is where the show started its decline. Whenever I hear people talk about Season 7 and 8, the only things I hear people talk about that stands out as really good is Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan. He plays the character to perfection. He's charming, witty, sadistic. He's a much better villain than the Governor in my opinion. But the issue with Negan is they show us him at his absolute worst right when we meet him. It was a great way to introduce us to the character if he was going to progressively get worse and worse, but instead what ended up happening is as soon as Negan killed Glenn and Abraham, nothing else he did had quite that same kick. He just became the funny bad guy that would put on a mean face and torment Rick for the fun of it. However, it's without a doubt that the seasons with the Governor were far better. In my personal opinion, the first 6 seasons were just peak television. Obviously, there was filler and the traditional TV bullshit that's common with shows that go on this long, but you couldn't name me a bad season from seasons 1 to 6. After that, it seemed like the people behind it got lazy. The storylines became predictable, and the new characters they introduced just did not hit the same. And I have yet to mention this beauty. Absolutely fantastic idea in Season 8 that was totally, and I mean totally, not the worst possible choice in the years that this show was on: killing Carl Grimes. This was when the show started to truly lose it. At this point, so many of the characters we fell in love with during the best parts of the show were gone. Glenn, Abraham, Sasha, Carl, Beth, Herschel. But the reason why this one is so trash is because in the comics, Carl became that fucking guy. So why was Chandler Riggs axed from the show? I've gotten a ton of different responses to this question, and honestly none of them make the showrunner, Scott Gimple, look good. The most, I guess, media-trained answer that was given is that Carl was killed to give Rick a reason to keep Negan around. There were so many other better ways you could have gone about that. Or how about the other theory that they just didn't want to pay him as an adult actor? Or maybe he demanded too much money? Who knows? At the end of the day, killing Carl Grimes off was the single worst decision this show ever made, especially since at the beginning of Season 9, we lose Rick as well. He doesn't die. They couldn't miss out on that spin-off money a few years down the road, but Andrew Lincoln wanted to leave the show to spend more time with his children, which is an extremely understandable reason. So they wrote off his character in a way where the in-world characters think he's dead, but he's actually fucked off with the CRM doing whatever the hell. We see him at the end of the very last episode for a couple minutes, but that was just to set up the spin-off, which was actually pretty good. Might talk about that in the future. Speaking of the spin-off though, it was only half about Rick. The other half was about Michonne, who left the show during Season 10. By this point in the show, we were losing all of our favorite characters. None of the new ones could truly compete with the cast of old. The storylines were dragged out and interrupted by uninteresting side plots that centered around characters people didn't like, and this just kind of never stopped. Daryl and Carol were some of the last characters that the fans truly appreciated. Maggie left but came back. Negan was fun, and Aaron and Ezekiel were cool too, and my dog Jerry. But near the end, the show felt like a shell of its former self. In some ways, it became too polished, and was way more interested in setting up the spin-offs. But to be fair, it wasn't like everything after Season 7 was terrible. The Whisperers were sick, and Negan had a pretty cool redemption arc. Judith did some cool shit too, but a string of poor writing and character decisions made after the ending of the 6th season turned this once great show into something that remained bleeding out for years, occasionally having bright moments that gave fans hope for a brighter future for the show, and honestly, it didn't end badly. In a show with this many disappointing choices later on, I was satisfied with the ending, and it may seem like I spoke very negatively about the show during this video, but I'm actually a huge fan. The Walking Dead is one of my favorite shows of all time, but that doesn't mean I can cover for its bullshit. I can honestly say seasons 1 to 6 are absolute cinema. It just veered in the wrong direction moving forward. Thank you for watching this video. We have one last video before the end of the year. Initially, I was planning on only dropping one video in December and taking time off until the end of the year, but I remain hard at work delivering on my weekly promise, which as you may have seen is actually occasionally more than once a week. I can't promise that's going to happen every week, but if I'm feeling it, I may drop an extra video here or there. But until that time comes, that's been it for me today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next week for my review of another Brad Pitt movie. Any idea what it could be? See you guys next time.